Hello everyone, welcome to the DraftCast, the place to get all your news about the draft events of the week. This week we're going to review the league table for game week 18. We're going to look at our guests' team for game week 18 and game week 19. We'll do some predictions for game week 19. We'll also have our guests segment, and our guest this week is the manager for Gareth Northgate, William Morris. How are you doing, Will?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Long time coming.
Yeah, but, pleasure to have you on.
Yeah, certainly looking forward to this moment.
Good. I'm glad that everyone is looking forward to coming on.
I think it's the anticipation. I think when you hear everybody else on the DraftCast, I think it makes you want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
I hope I'll get my opinions across as a two-time champion. So looking forward to it.
Okay, well, we'll start with the league table. But before we start this, I want to bring something onto the DraftCast. And that is acknowledgement that, for those that are listening and are not part of our group, you may not know, but all of our stats come from one person. Okay? So any stat you hear on the DraftCast or you may read comes from one person. And that is the manager for Peaky Blinders, Adam Waters. And today, we have to admit that he has got an incorrect stat. It was recorded in our private chat. And for game week 18, we had the lowest score recorded from all the seasons of this draft league. But as it was happening, we were being told that it was not going to be the lowest score. It was going to be joint lowest. So I wanted to bring it onto the DraftCast to record the fact that he got it wrong. And so our statman needs to improve his reliability of stats. Wouldn't you agree, Will?
Well, I hope you're going to get him on soon to counteract that claim that you just made. It's hard for me. I mean, I haven't done the in-depth review of the stats, so it's hard for me to comment.
Well, he showed us. He had it all written down. It was there.
It's something which I'm going to stay out of. I'm going to sit firmly on the fence, and I'm going to let Mr. Peaky Blinders answer that when he gets his invitation to the DraftCast.
Fair enough. I just thought it was worth mentioning.
Fence, isn't it? So yeah. Sitting on the fence firmly.
The league table. So, as I've just mentioned, we had the lowest recorded score from James with 11 points. But granted, there were a lot of players not playing this week. So not many people have got high scores this week, but we had a joint high score of 39 through Tom and Adam. So I think, to be fair, they both did a stellar week, considering how many players or how many games were on. So well done to them.
Agreed. I think they did exceptionally well on what was an absolutely terrible week for everyone, really. I mean, you mentioned Jim had the lowest score of 11. I mean, I know he's got a lot of players missing, but he's fortunate that his reserve goalkeeper, Ramsdale, for the worst team possibly in Premier League history, somehow kept a clean sheet, also with saves and also with bonus points.
Yeah.
And he made up, I imagine, my maths isn't great, but probably 90%, if not slightly over, of his points that week, which is absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
And something he should probably be slightly ashamed of, even having that score.
Well, he's got it, that's on record now, isn't it? So until someone beats it, yeah.
No, and fair play to Blinders and Team Rowe, getting anything. I would have said probably above 25 was a respectable score this week.
Yeah.
So to get 39, which to be fair, a lot of us would actually take
in a normal game week. Yeah.
In a normal game week, some of the shockers that have been pulled out. I think they've drafted well there, so they've had a decent week. Especially when you look at Adams, who, to be fair, from his starting lineup, he was actually missing 5 players and still bagged 39. So if he'd have had actually all the other players there, he'd have done pretty well for himself.
Yeah. I mean, I was the only person. I mean, I moved up, jumping Jack and James, but again, I think this week it's not really worth taking attention of any movement on the table because it was just such a poor week for everybody.
Yeah, Jack had a shocker when you look at it. He's had hardly anyone play, and also Sterling who we won't go in depth and think enough's been said about Sterling. But
Yeah.
for him to come off the bench and fluff a penalty last minute and end on -1 is that. I mean, that's the stuff you don't want to be seeing, isn't it? So his score could have technically been what I think it's 5 goals from midfielder. He could have had an extra 6 points. So he's -1. So yeah, it's not good for him at all.
No. So I think that pretty much wraps it up for the league table. So our next segment is doing our team review of your team. So as I think we've always, there's not much to say about game week 18. No. The only honourable mention for you is probably Kane, who got you 8 points. Other than that, it's pretty standard week for everybody. So yeah,
he definitely rescued me. Without his points, it would have been an absolute shocker of a week. Lookman came off the bench to get a few points, but for one of the first times in Man United's away game recent history, Fernandes didn't get double figures. He didn't actually do anything of note, which was a shame, considering he just won his 4th calendar player of the month for the year, which is no player in history has ever bettered that.
That's impressive.
So for him to get, it's very impressive. So for him to get a 2-pointer, wasn't what I was hoping for, but it's something I suppose you've got to take. You can't expect him to, get the level of points he gets each week, because what he does is sometimes it's just absolutely ridiculous for the league.
Yeah. So looking at game week 19, who do you think? Who do you think will disappoint you from those who have a double game week on your team?
In my team, it's a difficult one, because you're looking at it, and I think the one that stands out for me is probably going to be Werner, in my honest opinion.
Yeah,
I think a lot was expected of Werner when he came, and he had a spell at the start of the season where he looked like he was going to be quality. Like he scored a brilliant goal against Southampton. I think in all competitions as well, he scored about 6 or 7 in a row. So you're thinking there that we've got a player here. And he was my number 1 overall pick. And it just seems at the moment, Frank Lampard seems to be sticking him out of the wing, which I don't think is particularly fair on him, knowing that he's an out-and-out striker. His strike rate in Germany's brilliant. He's got a good strike rate for the national team. You pay, I think it was 50, 60 odd million quid, whatever it was for him, and you play in that position. I don't really understand it. I get patience at a big club like Chelsea is thin. But to be fair, they've got Giroud playing, who I think is probably the most underrated striker in the Premier League. He just gets goals. You can't say anything else. He's not the most attractive, I guess, number 9, in the way that he's a bit of a lump. He's not particularly quick, but the way he holds the ball up, and if you cross the ball into the box, it's a very good chance he's going to be running across the near post and putting it in the net. So Werner, he's away at Fulham and he's away at Leicester. For a team like Chelsea, they're attacking disposals. I'd like to expect to see him getting at least a goal from one of those 2 appearances, but I think I'll be lucky if he starts both games, to be honest. I think he'll probably be my biggest disappointment this week. Fingers crossed I'm wrong and he gets a hat-trick in both games, but I can't see it happening.
Yeah. You've got Laporte first on your bench, but he's got a red exclamation mark. What's that for? Are you expecting him to play in either of those 2 games? Or
the thing is with Laporte, he was arguably City's best centre-half probably for like the last couple of years since Company left. So I think when everyone bought Diaz, I think we all just assumed that the partnership would be Diaz and Laporte. Diaz on the right and Laporte on the left. But the thing is with Laporte, he's a bit of a fancy nightmare, because when he plays, he gets you clean sheets, and he's like to maybe pop up with the odd goal or here and there. But it's just his injury record's killed him at the moment. And John Stones, fair play to him, looks like a different player from when he from the last few years, where he's almost become a bit of a laughing stock since the World Cup, where he was brilliant with Maguire.
Yeah.
But since we had that brilliant spell at the World Cup, we've almost came back, and they've almost probably been found out a little bit that they're relatively limited players. But no, Stones, to be fair to him, he's played well. I've got Laporte in there purely on the hopeful that if he does play, I'm thinking the Crystal Palace game, he might get a clean sheet. So even if he plays one of the 2, I don't think he'll keep a clean sheet against Villa. even with City's sort of unbelievable defensive record at the moment, I think they'll probably win the game against Villa, but I don't think they'll be able to keep Villa out for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
I think the way that you've got like Grealish, Watkins. To be fair, the two wingers at the moment, El Ghazi and Traore, I don't like either of them. I think they're poor players. And I think they're going through just a lucky spell at the moment. So I think they're both fairly lazy. And I don't think they contribute as much as team as they should do. But for whatever reason, they seem to be getting goals every game at the moment. So I think we'll probably nick one, but I think City, the way they're playing at the moment, could get 2 or 3. So, yeah, interesting with Laporte, but he's just, with him not being 100% fit, and he's unlikely to start any of them, I couldn't include him from the start, I don't think.
Yeah, I was thinking it's interesting that you've put him above your other substitutes.
Yeah.
Even though they're not showing as being, having an injury, but are they, I don't know, do they start, or do they play the 90 minutes or not?
Yeah, it's difficult. You've got Carlos Vinicius, who looks like he's a great striker, but the thing is, you've got Kane, they play in a certain way.
Yeah.
With Jose, he's not gonna change. He likes to play the sort of Kane in the number 10 role, dropping deep, and then the two pacey wingers, notably Song, just sprint on behind the back four and hope Kane plays him in. That seems to be their way of playing at the moment. And there's no real room for Carlos to get in that team. I don't know how long he's going to be comfortable playing second fiddle. I know he's signed on that basis, but I mean, granted, they were playing against some, I can't remember what the team was, Marine or some Tim Pot team like that at the weekend, but he still managed to bag 3 goals in the first half. So from his point of view, he's done everything he probably can do to put his hand up.
Yeah.
But he's just not gonna start any of the games. And to be fair, I think if I look at his record of actual sort of minutes off the bench, he came on for a total of 12 minutes in the last two games, and he's only played 24 minutes of Premier League football since game week 5, which is pretty atrocious. The thing is, I do actually rate him. I think if he comes on the bench, he's got a chance to score, but it's just his minutes are limited. So, yeah, I've had to leave him sort of deep in the depths of my bench, unfortunately.
Fair enough. I haven't got any other questions or notes for your team. You've got a fair number of players with double game week, so hopefully you'll bag a few points. Yeah,
I think Werner will let me down, but I think in terms of someone who's going to do me well this week is Souček for West Ham. I picked up the agency. I can't remember who let him go, but I was surprised
I think.
When he was there. Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm surprised when he was made available. But he's a goal machine. He's an ugly footballer in the way that he's sort of his tall, gangly thing in midfield. He's not particularly muscular. He's unorthodox, but he seems to just get on the end of things. So he's playing Burnley at home, West Brom at home. West Ham just sold they're probably their only striker that I can think of in Haller who's actually recognised. So I think a lot of the emphasis will be on Souček pumping it long to him. So fingers crossed he's going to get me a few goals. I mean, his record, he's got 24 points in his last 3 games. So if he can add to that, I'll be more than happy.
Okay. Well, I will move on to the next segment, which is our predictions for game week 19. Who do you think team-wise out of our guys is going to top the leaderboard in terms of score in that week?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I would back myself.
That's not allowed, mate. You got to pick someone else.
Yeah, I sort of think we'd go down that way, but I do think I'm going to do very well this week. But if I'm going to look at another manager, a lot of managers that have been on the podcast seem to be looking towards the top of the league for this. I think that's a bit of a lazy opinion from some managers who've been on. So I'm going to actually look at this properly. I think I'm going to go for the 10th place Peaky Blinders. I think he's got the potential to have a seriously strong week. If we look at his goalkeeper, he's got Liverpool keeper. Liverpool at the moment seems to be doing pretty well in the league clean sheet wise. They've got 2 games. A big one against Man United at home. I think he'll keep a clean sheet in that, and I think he'll keep a clean sheet against Burnley the week after in the next game. He has got a lot of City players, but for me, they're the form team in the league at the moment. He's got Silva, Foden, who arguably at the moment, where we've all took the mick out of Foden a little bit, especially me for the trade situation, because he seems to score but then gets dropped for 2-3 weeks. But at the moment, I think he's probably undroppable. They've got 2 games: Palace at home, Villa at home. I think I mentioned earlier that I think Villa will still score. I know he's got Diaz and Zinchenko at the back, but I'll be very surprised if they concede against Crystal Palace. Palace, for me, going forward, they've been the same way for the last 4 or 5 years. They give the ball to Zaha and hope he does something.
Yeah.
But all I really think Zaha gets you is probably a booking for the other team because he'll fall over and cry about it, or buy the odd free kick and maybe a penalty. But the way he goes down, it doesn't look like he's going to get many pens. I think he had one against Arsenal midweek, which he went down too soft and VAR just laughed in his face. So I'd be surprised with that. He's got Ben Rama, who I rate. I think he's a good footballer as well as Antonio. With Antonio now, probably like to play through the middle. I think we saw last year what he can do. I think Lawrence had him, and he profited from getting, I think it was 4 or 5 goals in a game against Norwich or something ridiculous like that. And we're watching that in disbelief and just thinking, this is ridiculous from someone who actually isn't a striker. But I think those 2 could cause damage. Burnley at home, West Brom at home. And I think the Villa lads, I think they'll get points. Grealish and Watkins. I think Watkins hasn't scored for the last few games, but he's been probably Villa's most instrumental player in what he does. Against Crystal Palace, he bagged 3 assists. He's one of those players who just needs 1 goal, and I think we'll start seeing a flurry of goals coming in. He's had some very harsh VAR calls go against him where sort of the shoelace or the braid of his hair is offside. But he's hit the post, he's hit the
Spoken
bar.
like a true Villa fan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, you've got to stick up to your own, haven't you? And if Barkley comes back, I'm almost relatively surprised Adam's not starting him. I think he's probably thinking that he'll only get maybe partial minutes, maybe come off the bench. But I think if Barkley comes back and if he has the level of form that he had beforehand, I think he's got a real chance of getting him some points. So, you look at his bench. He's got Benteke last on his bench. So he's not going to do anything. And you've got Reguilon, who I rate, and Ayling. They've only got single game weeks, but away at Sheffield United, Reguilon, that you'd be liking. He's thinking it's a bank of a cleaning.
Yeah.
And Leeds at home against Brighton could be anything. You could have your centre half, Luke Ayling, or centre or right back wherever he plays now. He could well end up letting in 2 goals, but also bagging himself 3 assists and a goal. The way Leeds play, it's hard to bet against them going forward.
Okay.
So I think I'm going to go put my manager at the bottom, and I think he's have a decent week this week, or a decent double game week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go for someone at the bottom as well. I'm going to go for Tom, Team Rowe. Every one of his players is playing double game week. So although they may not all score well, it's a good opportunity to, just score more points, isn't it? Strength in numbers. He has got 3 City players. Yeah, so I think it'd be interesting to see overall who does well this game week. Like we've said in our private chat, we're all hoping someone's going to break that 100 mark because that's not been done yet. But it'll be interesting to see if that happens.
Yeah, I think this week definitely has potential. The double game weeks are often a poison chalice because you think you've got a player who's going to play twice.
Yeah.
There's nothing more anticlimactic than they have a great first game week of, say, they get 8 points, 9 points. You think you're on for another absolute monster week. The team keeps coming and they drop from the squad.
Yeah.
And there's nothing more demoralising than that. But if anyone's going to do it, there's some big players there. A lot of double game weeks. Liverpool and City playing double game weeks. So if you've got players from either of those sides, I think you've got to be looking forward to it.
Yeah. So is there any player that you think is going to get that man of the game week position?
I think I know I touched on just selfishly earlier on Souček, but I think he certainly has potential. If I go through and just have a look at some of the other teams that are playing double game weeks, and certainly who they're facing, it's hard for me, to be honest, to look past possibly someone like Leicester. They've got Southampton and Chelsea at home. Don't get me wrong, they're tough games, but it always comes back to Vardy, who I absolutely dislike as a footballer, but you can't knock his goal record.
Yeah.
So I think he's got potential to do well. Yeah, it's a tricky one, but also I do think, against my better judgment, that Foden, if he starts both the games, I think he's got a decent chance of being the top player this week. You can't look past the form he's in, and yeah, although I'm sort of betting against my own team, Villa, there, I think I'm going to put my sensible hat on and say he's going to be up there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to go for a City player as well. I think it's going to be a tough one depending on who out among them plays both games, but we'll see. I think I'm going to put my money on De Bruyne this week, but we'll see.
Yeah. De Bruyne for me is he's living off his name at the moment. The last 2 years he's been ridiculously good. Like, he's just scored points for absolute fun. But this year he's turning out to be sort of a pretty average player. So yeah, we'll see how it goes with him, but he might do well.
Yeah.
I'm saying that now, I'll probably end up with a huge amount of points now. But yeah, we'll see how he goes.
So our next segment will be your guest segment. But before we do that, we're going to break because we have a message from our sponsor. Do you want to make reading easier? Would you like to reduce visual stress and improve your reading speed and accuracy? Then check out Coloured Overlays by Artscrafter. Some people find black text on a white background difficult to read. Tinted coloured overlays support the visual cortex by filtering out the wavelengths to which some individuals are oversensitive. This can improve the reader's ability to analyse visual information and reduce migraines and headaches. So if this sounds like something you need or know someone who does, check out artscrafter.co.uk and get yourself an assorted pack starting from as little as £3.27. Make sure to use the exclusive code TheDraftCast at checkout for a 30% discount on all products. A big thanks to Artscrafter for sponsoring this episode. Now back to the DraftCast. Thanks again for Artscrafter for sponsoring this episode. We'll move on to your segment then, Will. I'll let you take over because I know absolutely nothing about this.
No, that's all right. I hope he's transferring some money to the treasurer. By the way,
No. This is an independent party to the Treasury's pot. Will that money will be used for improving the DraftCast?
Okay, right. No, fair play. Nice plug. Yeah. So my section this week is focusing around the hard deal which I think goalkeepers get. I think we've spoken about it in the WhatsApp group beforehand, how some of the keepers in the league make fantastic saves, although unfortunately the ball ends up in the net. So I decided to use this week to focus on the importance of having a decent goalkeeper in your team.
Yeah. So
I feel that goalkeepers are somewhat overlooked when we get into discussions about sort of, is trading a goalkeeper, is that good trade bait? Or when we're actually drafting people, when we have the original draft at the start of the season, I'm surprised they don't go higher up than they do. I think it's usually around sort of round 4 or 5. You might correct me if I'm wrong on that, but and I think the focus is always usually around 2 goalkeepers. That's Edison and Alisson. I think people view them as the absolute candy in terms of keepers. So I'm going to sort of dispel that myth in terms of those 2 keepers, but also stress the importance of still having a good goalkeeper in your squad. So when we look at the number 1 goalkeeper this year, he's actually part of my team, which is Martinez, who's got 83 points, which is a really solid return from a goalkeeper at this point in the season. And the thing is, when you compare him to an outfield player, so what I've done is I've drawn up a brief comparison of the best Villa defender alongside him and the amount of points that they've got as well, just so that you can see how important the goalkeeper is. So Martinez has got 83 points this year. Like I say, best goalkeeper in the league, hands down. And then Villa's best defender after that is Tyrone Mings. He's got 62 points. That's 21 points less than Martinez. One thing to factor in as well about the goalkeepers is that they rarely get injured. And also with the goalkeeper, they get the clean sheet points, which a standard defender gets, but they also get save points.
Yeah.
If you get a clean sheet, they're likely to get a bonus point as well. So I think having a goalkeeper sort of from around about 6th place to about 12th place is really sort of the MVP of goalkeepers. We look at the next best goalkeeper in the league, Nick Pope at Burnley, a team that is largely unattractive. Like nobody really wants to have a Burnley player in their team. But Pope has got 79 points, so just 4 shy of Martinez. When you compare him to Burnley's best outfield defender, who's only got 51 points, that's a 28-point difference in terms of the goalkeeper to defender. Same next best goalkeeper is Hugo Lloris, 76 points. Their best defender is Eric Dyer, which is an absolute calamity. But he's got 53 points, again, 23 points less. Then you've got Arsenal's goalkeeper, Bernd Leno, 73 points. Hector Bellerin is their best defender at 61. So this gives you some context to how important the goalkeeper is. It's all good having a back four, but without having a solid goalkeeper, you can actually get more points than defenders. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't true for all goalkeepers. Obviously, if you're a member of an elite club, someone like Liverpool or Man City, you're probably going to be looking at people like Robertson, purely for the fact that he does get clean sheets, but he also is light to bag you about 10 assists a season.
Yeah.
So I just really wanted to highlight just how important it was to actually have a decent goalkeeper. I think, like me and Adam did a recent trade earlier for Kane, which obviously drew up a few question marks with the managers, as it always does when someone has the knackers to trade a big player. Bit in response, Adam did get Alisson, who, fair play to him, he's picked up a lot of clean sheets at the moment. But when you look at the context compared to other goalkeepers, he's not even in the top 5. The only person in the top 5 to dispel the myth of the goalkeepers being better than defenders was Alex McCarthy at Southampton, who, to be fair, I think had a brilliant season.
Yeah.
I think he's probably reflex saves, he's up there. In terms of his influence on games, he's been very, very good. He's got 71 points, but Southampton's best defender after that is Bednarek, who's got 79 points. So he's the only one out of the top 5 goalkeepers who's actually got a better defender. Sort of if you go further on down the league, in terms of looking at the goalkeepers, I think Alisson and Edison come relatively soon afterwards, but that's when you start hitting the elite level defenders. And that's when you start seeing the assists come in.
Yeah.
And that's where you start getting more points. And we all know Liverpool's fullbacks are cheap players. They get 3 bonus points even when they let in about 3 or 4. Yeah, I just really want to really highlight the importance of a goalkeeper. I think for our managers out there that are criticising or don't see them as a sort of a high candy stake, I'd really encourage them to reassess. I think last year when I won the league, I think I had Dean Henderson as my number 1 goalkeeper, who, don't get me wrong, Sheffield United sort of fell into that category of probably the top 8 club. But the amount of saves that he made got him X amount of points extra than you would expect from a team with a poorer goalkeeper. And like I say, if you make, I think it's either 2 or 3 saves and you get a point. So I think there's a fear as well of taking a goalkeeper out when they're playing someone like Liverpool or Man City, because they could let in 2 or 3 goals quite easily.
Yeah.
But if you've got a decent goalkeeper with decent reflexes, they can still end up with 4 or 5 points just from paying 2 points in the match, but also getting the points from the bonus saves. So I think it's just something to really sort of bear in mind that. So
yeah, it's an interesting thought to bring to the table. I mean, I've got 2 of the sort of top 10 keepers, so it makes me think about whether I should look at offering one of them as a trade, like say, well, as candy, but people don't see them as candy, but at least some weight into the trade, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's what I just wanted to try get across, was the fact that don't be intimidated if you get offered someone who doesn't play for a top 2 club who's a goalkeeper, because in reality they're probably going to be worth more points over the course of a season than either of those 2 players. I think a manager once famously said in our group that to double up on Liverpool defenders, which is fine, but just in terms of the actual goalkeeper for those 2 clubs, yes, they'll probably get you clean sheet points. They don't really do a lot during the game. They don't really do any saves. They don't really. They're never going to qualify for bonus points. So they might make the odd 1 save a game, which is what they earn their money for, but they're not as worked as someone like Martinez, who will get probably pluck 4 or 5 great saves out, and who will get the points on it. So yeah, I think hopefully some managers will take note of that and sort of pay some more respects to the goalkeeper going forward.
Yeah, I'm sure it will spark a conversation. It's definitely an interesting thing to think about. Like you say, not many people bring it to the table or discuss it in trades. I think there's been a few, because I know I made a trade with Adam for goalkeeper. That's how he's got McCarthy. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, definitely worth having a conversation about. Yeah. Have you got anything else to add to that?
I don't think so. No, I think that's as much as I want to cover off, really. And yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me on the DraftCast.
Yep, definitely. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks to our sponsor, Artscrafter. Remember to subscribe, like the video, comment, give us some suggestions for what you'd like to hear next time. And remember, this is the DraftCast, and draft is life. See you next time. Bye.